So hey guys, it's Plotsalot here with another My Hero Academia What If video, and today we're going to be doing What If Deku was Iron Man, part 7. So in the last part, we had Deku seeing Mei develop this metallic fluid that formed into a gauntlet around her hands, and Deku was very impressed with this. You know, they had a little chat about, making some notes or doing some development stuff together, and you guys were shipping it. We're not going to go into that this episode, sorry to disappoint you, but further work with Mei does happen outside of school for the next couple weeks. Deku and Mei actually manage to create a prototype for a new suit that condenses into a fluid and is stored in a little kind of pouch almost, and it's connected to Deku's USB port. So essentially, all he has to do is just think and it can deploy, just like his current suit, but with a lot less having to carry around a backpack everywhere. If the port connected bag is broken, it also forms as a backup measure. So for example, say he's attacked by a villain and he gets punched in the back, or if somebody attempts to surprise attack him and they think maybe slashing the bag would be a good idea to immobilize him or something, then essentially his bag will start forming into the suit automatically. It will just trigger the forming cycle and Deku is ready for combat that way as well. After the few weeks of working, Deku decides to show Mei around the Iron Medicines Lab, his company that he created near the start of the series, because she was pestering about it. And of course she was, because it's a really cool lab, state of the art, and she wants to see it. Deku decides the first thing that he's going to show her is actually his probably most prideful, prideful's the wrong word because Deku's not really prideful, but it's the machine that he's the most proud of because of what it's done, and that is the machine that healed All Might. He didn't mention the healing and she didn't mention anything about it, so Deku was relieved about that, but he did mention how many lives it had saved because he's very proud of it, and Mei just gets in awe at this. She's hoping for something that reaches commercial success herself. Now, Mei isn't exactly the most kind of moral person. She did use Ida to kind of be an advertising clone during her viewing at the sports festival, but Mei doesn't care that much about kind of the morals, but she cares that he managed to make something that was such a great commercial success. Deku, he hasn't really thought about anything else that it could be used for, but Mei, she's kind of springing into action with this. She's like, wow, this could be used for other things than just healing people. And Mei suggests making a super soldier machine. She looks at Deku and she says, you're a little bit scrawny and small for a hero, not like All Might, and that gets Deku a bit flustered. He knows that he doesn't look like All Might, but hearing it, because Mei is so just kind of saying whatever's on her mind, kind of gets him a little bit. He's like, whoa, that's a bit out of left field. He's thinking like, damn, that's a bit direct, isn't it? And Deku's like, yeah, but this is how I am, and I think I can still be a great hero and be like this symbol of peace, and that's kind of what the suit makes me look a little bit bigger, and blah, 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 blah. But Mei just interrupts him and says, how about we make a super soldier machine that will make you more like All Might? And this catches Deku's interest a little bit, and he says, how can we do that? They proceed to have a really, really long conversation in the lab about how they could possibly go about doing this. And Mei suggests that using the healing formula and the healing machine that's been developed could essentially allow for you to artificially grow people as well. So if Deku were to inject growth hormones and testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, all these kind of things that would essentially come with growing all in a quicker amount of time, while also introducing chemicals in that would make it so that they get absorbed faster, you could essentially jack up a person's growth rate, and by stretching out their limbs and by making sure that they're physically growing as well, while in using the healing serum to heal as they get stretched, so the micro tears get healed very quickly, then you could essentially get someone to grow muscles very, very quickly and actually grow physically larger. Deku's kind of shocked initially at this idea, as it seems kind of esoteric, but after mulling it over with Mei a little bit more, he adds a few extra points to make it A, safer, and B, more effective in his eyes. such as introducing artificial proteins and hormones to prevent the growth hormones and all the extra chemicals being pumped into his body from negatively affecting anything else. He doesn't want to, mess with the chemistry inside of his brain. He doesn't want to start dealing with issues like, for example, his nerves tearing from the growth. He doesn't want to deal with, unexpected side effects on his organs and so on and so forth. And so he introduces blocker chemicals into the formula. And also, one thing he does mention that she forgot was that all the other internal organs need to grow proportionally as well. So if you have this 14-year-old boy's heart in the body of some jacked bodybuilder, it's not going to be able to keep up with it, and they're just going to get tired very quickly. So introducing machines into the body, so essentially performing surgery and using miniature versions of this machine to physically grow the chambers of the heart, or the liver, or the stomach, for example, would also need to be done for every single organ. And so this would be a pretty big undertaking, and it would need to be personalized for each person. So Deku spends another few weeks designing and actually making these machines with Mei after a bit of kind of persuasion from Mei. Incrementally improving on the designs, adding new things. So one thing that I could mention that Deku did add through this procedure was that Deku added a way for the machine to actually ensure that the growth happened over a short enough period, because having the body grow like this, maybe if you came in once a day and you started doing small little growths, it'd be better. But Deku managed to streamline the design into a way where you could do it all in one sitting and just kind of come out as a super soldier, almost like the Captain America super soldier serum experiment from the first Avenger movie. So having these machines made, Deku essentially did plan to test it on himself, and so all the machines were made for himself. But Mei asks, are you sure would it not be smarter to test it on, maybe an animal test subject or something? Because Mei doesn't really see the ethics behind it, but Deku insists that no, I'm going to test this on myself, partially just because I don't want to have to deal with animal testing, and also partially just because I feel like I'm proud enough in our work, and I feel like all the work that we put in, and all the safes we put in, and all the fail-safe mechanisms we have, it should be safe enough. And if it's not safe enough, then we shouldn't test it on an animal in the first place. So Deku gets himself into this automatic surgery machine, essentially, and he decides to test the machine on himself. He also adds one little gimmick into it, which is that he wants to actually extend the number of USB ports that he has, and so he manually adds in high-spec USB ports being added into the actual program for the automatic surgery that's going to take place. And this means that now he has more interfaces that he can use to do different things at the same time. It also just speeds up the I/O for his suit. If he wants to make it more complicated, he can have different USB ports essentially acting with different things, so that instead of having everything coming through one port, he now has a higher capacity, and they're all connected to the little kind of USB port that he's currently got. Deku gets into the machine, and they decide to test it over a weekend. So Deku goes ahead, sits in the machine. He's a little bit nervous, but Mei gives him a smile and says, "See you in a day then, Deku, and next time, maybe you'll actually look a bit like All Might." Deku laughs a little bit at this, because, yeah, he thinks he might. He's programmed it to grow him to about 6'6", and if his calculations are correct, his weight should be about 120, 130 kilograms, which still isn't up to All Might's 250, but if he came back to school looking like All Might, he'd be in a bit of trouble. He knew that even after this, he was still going to have grown enough that realistically it's not going to be enough. Deku had done some muscle compacting to make it look like he hadn't grown that much physically, but to maintain the strength. But he still didn't want to go into school and get questioned about it as much, so he'd planned about a few months of breaks, which means that he would miss the sports festival, he'd miss the USJ incident, and so on and so forth. But again, Deku doesn't know this stuff's going to happen. He just knows that if he goes back to school looking like a young All Might after a couple weeks of, leaving class kind of giddy with Mei, talking about this weird invention they were going on about, people were going to be a bit suspicious about what it was, and Deku really didn't want to have to deal with the essentially the military, if I'm being honest, because this kind of technology was initially in the first Avenger movie developed by the US military because they wanted super soldiers. And Deku doesn't want his machines being used for war. He wants them to be used for healing people and making them better. His other iron medicines machine has been used to kind of repair limbs of soldiers and so on and so forth, but it doesn't have a direct use in the sense that a soldier can't just go ahead and strap this on his back and heal himself as he's going through combat. It's not that efficient. But if they get damaged in combat, then that's not a direct combat use, whereas this could put super soldiers into combat, giving the military a massive advantage in war, which could directly be used to end people's lives, which he's not up for. But yeah, Deku tests the machine on himself, and after about 24 hours of surgery, Deku comes out, and it worked. He's grown to a height of 6'6" and a weight of about 125 kilograms. Pretty much pure muscle as well. Deku decides to keep the stretch marks from this as a reminder of the power of this machine and why it really needs to be kept away from the public eye to avoid military interests kind of clouding the usage of this device. And he strictly tells this to the staff who's going to be, who they're going to see this device, because it is in the Iron Medicines lab. They've seen it, they've seen them making it, and some of the senior engineers have seen the development of this. He strictly instructs them with his executive powers as being the main shareholder, 51% of the votes of the company. He instructs them that this 100% needs to be kept secret from the public in the way that it's actually kind of used. And Mei hears this and she actually gives a suggestion. Why not kind of put this out as a way for physiotherapy? Why not market it as a physiotherapy machine? So, say that it should only be used for people who are undergoing physiotherapy, so people who've been in a wheelchair and want to start walking again. Their legs are obviously going to be weak, so this, small usages of it, without the surgical kind of usage, instead just with manual stretching and injection of the serum, along with a couple growth hormones and the blockers, could help you be used for physiotherapeutic uses, and they patented it so it can only be used by Iron Medicines. Deku knows that this might still get used by some militaries, but by keeping it relatively, in a testing phase, quote unquote, so putting it through the regular trials that any other medical kind of device would have to go under, would keep it out of military hands for at least a small while they came up with the right marketing and legal jargon that they have to have so that the military doesn't just use it for that purpose. But Deku's happy with that. And he actually ends up hiring Mei as an internship engineer. Mei is pretty happy with this because she knows that, Deku's not going to get his own internship because he's not going to be at the sports festival. But Mei's still going to be there. She hasn't used this machine on herself. And it saves her a little bit of trouble finding an internship at the sports festival. Mei isn't exactly one of those people who you'd expect to kind of want to, I want to do everything on my own. She's more of a, I'll just take whatever comes on the plate if it's a good opportunity. And Iron Medicines is like this global company now. It's got this amazing technology and these amazing labs, and Mei's already seen how great they can be. They've literally made a super soldier machine like the ones that would have been in comic books a couple hundred years ago. Like, that's insane to her. That's pretty insane. So she's pretty happy to get an internship there. And she's placed under Deku's direct supervision as a line manager. So for the next few months, as Deku goes ahead and actually, skips school, first off, he had to explain to Principal Nezu why he was going to be skipping school for a few months, until practically the end of the year. And he explains to Principal Nezu the reason why, but he gets a surprisingly little resistance. Principal Nezu's very smart, and he understands that Deku's already miles ahead of the rest of the class, and has a good reason to back up the absences that he personally agrees with. I think Principal Nezu's the kind of miniature intelligent polar bear would be more accurate, but yeah, the kind of being that would kind of respect life and doesn't particularly want this technology to be used for military uses, or to, God forbid, be used by villains. So keeping it quiet, keeping it on the down low, and letting himself pretend to have gone off and done quote-unquote training would be much easier to explain and arouse a lot less suspicion. Principal Nezu does actually ask All Might to kind of pretend to train Deku as well, and All Might agrees. He understands after hearing the reason why, and you know, now All Might and Deku are kind of on this little level because they've both got these hidden secrets that the world can't know about, and so they actually get quite close over the few months when they sit and talk together while pretending to train. All Might actually does train Deku a bit because, you know, he's not attending the hero training sessions, the combat training sessions, and he's a lot more physically capable now, and Deku wants to test out what his new body can do. So he does train without the suit, learning some, like, you know, fighting from All Might. All Might actually calls in a little bit of help from some friends, some hero friends that he has, for example, Gunhead, to teach Deku some basic martial arts, because Deku can't always rely on his suit, and he knows that. That's why he initially started working out before, but now he's got an extra reason because he's actually physically buff now as well. All Might notices how his proportions actually look really similar to when he was just starting out as a hero, and Deku blushes a little bit at hearing this because as much as he's grown physically, he's still the same person in terms of his brain. He's still Deku, so hearing that, you know, he looks like All Might from All Might himself is a massive compliment to him. Yeah, Deku comes back for the final exams, and a bunch of stuff has happened with the class though. For example, the USJ incident, the incident with Stain in Hosu City after the sports festival, the whole sports festival happening. Everything stays roughly the same because the only real difference is that Bakugo kind of takes on the role that Deku would, but albeit a bit more aggressively and being a lot stronger than Deku was in the original timeline, since Bakugo already has full cowling. Bakugo actually develops quite a lot over the year as well, because in this essential time skip that I've put in, Bakugo kind of learns a lot about fighting and learns to humble himself a lot, because he's seen Deku as well. Because again, he's All Might's successor, and so All Might felt it would be appropriate for him to see these kind of things. He already knows about the One for All secret and how All for One kind of gave it and so on and so forth. But having this extra little bit of kind of keep quiet responsibility also means that when Deku comes back to class, Bakugo's not as jarred. I mean, he's still jarred in the first place from the fact that Deku's essentially managed to find a way to buff himself up for nothing. And after a couple weeks into this these few months of hiatus that Deku has from school, essentially, All Might suggests that why not get Bakugo to use the machine as well? Because as the successor to One for All, he kind of needs to be very, very strong. And Deku refutes this initially, saying that, okay, well, but shouldn't he train on his own? He needs to show the world his growth and development as the symbol of peace. But All Might says, well, I'm still running out of One for All. I'm not injured and so I can use it all the time now, but it's still just embers. I'm not as physically degenerated, I'm back to my old self, but One for All is getting weaker and weaker by the day, and I'm only getting older, and there is going to be a point where I'm going to have to retire, and Bakugo needs to step in as the symbol of peace. We can't have it the same as when All for One was there, and these villains ran rampant. Nobody wants that. Deku agrees with this entirely, and proposes a compromise, which is over the summer, after the final exams and so on, use it then, and train Bakugo during the summer as well, to get used to his new body. Bakugo is a little bit ticked off with this, but he's not dumb. He might be a little bit of a hothead, but he isn't stupid. He understands the reasoning behind this and reluctantly agrees, after a little bit of persuasion from both All Might and Deku that this is for the best. Most of which consisted of Bakugo telling them both to shut up and go to hell, because of course he did. He wants to get strong his own way, but after hearing from All Might and other people that All Might have introduced him to, for example, Gran Torino, who he did his hero internship with, he understands that All for One is not something to be trifled with, and this is for the good of the world, essentially. So he sucks it up, and over the summer they do plan to do this. But first, Deku does return in time for the final exams, and we'll actually be going on about what goes on then in the next part. Alright, thank you guys for watching. I made this part quite a lot longer than the other ones because, again, you guys have been asking about this one during my entire break, and I felt like if I was going to make a short part, first off I'd have to skip over a load of those details, and maybe this would have been split into like 3 parts where I would have added a bit more detail, but after so long, and you know, you guys have been waiting, feel like it's only fair that I make a very in-depth part. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video, but before that, if you liked the video, leave a like, leave a comment on any suggestions or anything you thought about the video. Subscribe if you haven't already, hit the little bell notification icon thingy so that you get your notifications whenever I upload. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. As always, I'll see you in the next part, and yeah, bye guys.